To our hosts, let me start by saying I really appreciate and commend what you have done. Corporates, Bamkwanazi, sometimes get into the space of being obsessed with what profit, what comes, and forget the public responsibility on issues of common good. Because it is not always about the bank balance, but it is about the scales and the balance of our moral code as a country when we're faced with challenges. Why do we exist? And what impact must we leave when we are gone? When we transitioned in the 1990s, everybody wanted this democracy to work. And we chose the best of the best as DGs, as ministers. During that first 10 years, every indicator in the implementation of the RDP could be seen. In a village where there were no roads, you saw the roads. Where there were no houses, you saw the houses. Where electricity was not coming, you saw it. Where clinics were not there, you saw them. It was a period of glory. You went to Oxford, to Harvard, to Cambridge, to Yale, to many universities across the world. We became a textbook example of how a homegrown democracy works. Indicators, social indicators, economic indicators. At one stage, Eskom was ranked as #1 state-owned company in the world. But somewhere along the way, we dropped the ball. We left the highway and took an off-ramp. We went back into the textbooks on how a country can wrestle a victory away and end up with a loss. State capture. Madanga Commission now. What had happened? We never invested in the human resource development and succession planning in a deliberate manner. We had one of the best constitutions in the world. Our governance systems are ranked in the top 10. Procurement systems, everything else you can think of on paper. We focused on the institutions and the architecture of democracy, but we forgot the human element. We forgot ethics. We forgot the values, the intrinsic values there. Then what happened? People were striving to have clean audit by all means, because your promotion, your pay progression depends on this thing. You are praised. They even forgot the mandate of their institutions as they were chasing the clean audit. They lowered the APPs, the annual performance scores. Targets. Because they wanted to conform rather than perform. As if the creation of these institutions was about compliance and conformance, rather than performance and impact. But today we have a dilemma where we have some of the best annual reports, but the people for whom these annual reports are written still live in misery. They can't identify with what is written in the annual reports. This country's biggest crisis is the crisis of morality. we suffer from acute common sense deficit. Because it is simply common sense. You don't need complicated laws. You don't need anything. It's paid refuse collection. And you are not collecting the refuse. But you are going to court to say they are taking our role, which we have long abandoned. Then we start wondering why every survey from Human Rights, Human Resource Research Council to Afrobarometer and many other studies have been showing that the trust in public institutions is going down. We've become so obsessed with ourselves. A department that can perform its core business will be able to have a trip to New York for 3 million. And when you say, can you do this service in your core business, they say, we don't have the money. We are not different from Thabo Bester and Ket Matlala. It is corruption. When you misuse resources, a failing municipality in Mpumalanga cannot perform its basic services, can't close potholes, was able to travel 500 kilometers to Durban for a workshop. Guess what? The following day, it was the horse racing thing. Same people who came for the workshop re-emerged, refurbished with complicated heads. How then should people trust us? Why should they trust? It would be irrational for them to trust us. Because we think dealing with their pain is a PR exercise rather than an ethical responsibility. Because even these debates and issues which are going to embarrass us globally around the issues of migration, it's a simple matter. People say, you have the laws. Why have you not applied the laws? Inspectors, who is employed here? What is a critical skill? When you do not allow a rational process to work, you are unleashing the irrational ones to explode. So if we, the elite, do not understand the fierce urgency of the moment, that you are in a gated community will not help. The country could be reduced to ashes. And it is quite urgent that we should move. We saw with the Madlanga Commission, we saw with the Zondo Commission and other investigations that the problem was not cognitive and technical understanding. Some of the people, they had MBAs. We saw with Deloitte or KPMG that sometimes people will bring the cleverest of the people. We saw with Steinhoff, creative accounting. We saw with Enron. We saw with the 2008 financial crisis that the crisis is not the crisis of people who have not understood the technicalities. But once you are educated, but you have no character formation that looks at the values, you are as dangerous. E-education, what it does, if you were a thief, it refines you to be a better thief. If you are cruel, it makes you cruel with quotations. But values harness that knowledge in the right direction and say, do the right thing. In our constitution, there's a whole section 195, which deals with the constitutional values and principles. In chapter 10. First one, it says, public administration must be ethical and professional. It says, people's needs must be responded to. People must be consulted. There should be efficient use of resources. And in each one of these cases where you have corruption, it's when those values are not promoted and internalized. So we must go back, Mamo Speaker, to what we abandoned. The first one in the ecosystem of recreating an ethical public servant is to look at the whole ecosystem of the primary socializing agents. Just like our phones, at some point, you need to upgrade your moral software. Because the one you had in 2003 can no longer work. The issue of honesty, courage, empathy. Those will not be replaced by AI anytime soon. But in that ecosystem, though, we should start in the family. If the family has collapsed, where you learn yes and no, right and wrong, there is a problem. Morality collapses when you externalize it. I'm doing it because my boss didn't say anything. I'm doing it because it's not me, it's the policies. Integrity and ethics starts when you say, no matter which level I am occupying, I am responsible. When you say, I'm the leader we've been waiting for, even if I'm photocopying paper there, even if I'm a cleaner, because you are able to see things that no other person can see, you can be a whistleblower. How we should view public service and our ethical commitment should be that one day we will not be holding positions we're holding. One day we may not have the money we have. One day something will happen to you and you'll no longer be able to subscribe to Discovery health insurance. You will need public institutions to be functioning. So the ethical code, the moral code, in simplified version, is what is it that you commit yourself to that is beyond selfish needs of me, myself, and I. When you say it's going to be difficult, I'm going to be challenged, I may not have the promotion. Martin Luther King Jr. says, if you have not identified something for which you are prepared to die, you are not fit to live. Steve Biko says, it's better to die for an idea that shall live than to live for an idea that will die. When we talk history and people who made impact, we no longer remember what car they drove. We no longer remember what house they lived in. We no longer remember whether their bags were Louis Vuitton or not. We remember how they touched something bigger than themselves. Thank you.